It's Airtalk. I'm Larry Mantle. Good afternoon. Hope you're having a great day. Just want to remind you, tomorrow in our 10 o'clock hour, it's the final State of the State address by Governor Jerry Brown. We don't typically air the State of the State live, but this is historic. It's the last one he's going to give. Undoubtedly, legacy is an issue here for Jerry Brown with his two lengthy terms as governor with years in between them. We're going to carry that for you and also talk with various analysts after the speech. That's in our 10 o'clock hour tomorrow. A little bit later this hour on Air Talk, we'll take a look at a challenge to Arizona's death penalty prosecutions and a challenge that, if it prevailed at the U.S. Supreme Court, could have a huge impact on California's own death penalty. But first, a new state Senate bill's been proposed that would change the way eyewitness lineups are conducted by law enforcement. Changes have already been made by the feds for their lineups, and some local law enforcement groups have also changed how lineups are administered. This is all with the idea of trying to minimize the chances of misidentification, leading to convictions of people who actually didn't commit the crimes of which they're accused. With us is Democratic State Senator Scott Wiener of San Francisco, who introduced Senate Bill 923. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about the particular protocols that are contained in the bill. What are the requirements to try and reduce false IDs?
Sure, and just first quickly on the big picture, we do have an issue with eyewitness identifications leading to innocent people being convicted, and it's just the nature of human perception and how we identify people. In addition to the process of eyewitness identification, photo lineups or live lineups, where people can inadvertently sometimes be induced to identify someone who didn't actually commit the crime. And so innocent people go to jail, and when an innocent person goes to jail, that means the actual criminal is still out on the streets committing crimes. And so we want to, there's no statewide standard in California. We have some counties who that have adopted reforms. Most have not. We know that the U.S. Department of Justice, the American Bar Association, the International Association of Police Chiefs, and the California Commission on the Fair Administration of Justice have all recommended that we adopt these statewide protocols. And so they are a few things. First of all, when a witness is making an identification, it should be videotaped, so you can see both the questioner and the witness, and really be able to scrutinize that after the fact to make sure that there was no suggestion of who the suspect is. Something called blind administration, where the officer administering the lineup doesn't actually know who in the lineup is the suspect.
So that there couldn't be even subliminal leading to identify the prime suspect.
Right, exactly. And there's actually an alternative way to do that for smaller police departments that can't get an officer who doesn't know. So there's a different way of doing that, and we want to be flexible here. It will require that before any eyewitness identification lineup procedure, that the officer must tell the witness that the suspect may not be in the lineup. So they shouldn't assume that someone in the lineup is the suspect, because sometimes the witness might feel the need that they have to pick someone. So they need to be told that it's possible that no one in the lineup is the actual suspect. We also require in the bill the appropriate use of so-called fillers. So if they show you 6 people and presume one of them may be the suspect, and then the other 5 people are not, those other people, those photos or live people, need to fit the general description of the suspect. So in other words, you're not going to show the person who's the suspect plus 5 people who look totally different, so that the person will be induced to pick the only person who meets the general description. And then we also at the end require that the witness be asked, what is your confidence level? Are you extremely confident that the person you selected is the suspect, or do you have low confidence, medium confidence? Just to make sure that it's not, hey, this is the person who was identified, without actually knowing if maybe there's still a question in the witness's mind.
Just a couple questions about these protocols that are in your bill. One of them about having people in the lineup that meet the general description of the suspect. Very logical, but I'm wondering, in smaller jurisdictions, how do you do that? If you have a suspect who looks so different than other people in that community, and you don't have a large pool of people to draw on, how do they meet that protocol?
Well, sort of backing up, whether even if it's challenging, the reality is that if the witness comes forward and says, let's take an extreme case, the witness comes forward and says the perpetrator was an African-American male, and then you have a photo lineup with one African-American male and 5 white or Latino people, I think everyone would agree that would be absurd and unfair, and I don't think, I hope there are no departments that are doing that, and I doubt that there are. That's an extreme example, but, obviously in real life there's going to be other examples, not that extreme, but still somewhat similar, where the person says, the person had blonde hair, and you have one person with blonde hair and the others that, no one else with blonde hair, maybe other people with dirty blonde, and so you end up, the witness is going to get drawn to the one person. So it can create a challenge, and to be very clear, this bill was just introduced. We are going to work with law enforcement, with the counties, with smaller communities. The legislative process is a winding one, and we want to make sure we're working with all of the stakeholders.
Yeah, I guess my point was if the suspect's identified, let's say, as having a facial tattoo, well, you can walk down the street in L.A. and, pull people with facial tattoos. You're in Modoc County and the suspect has a facial tattoo. That might not work.
For live lineups, but for photo lineups, even small communities have much more flexibility in terms of what photos they're using. Again, there are, every community is a little bit different, and we want to work with both the large and small jurisdictions.
We're talking with State Senator Scott Wiener of San Francisco. The Democrat has introduced a bill with Assemblymember Mark Levine of Marin County that would standardize how eyewitness lineups are conducted, whether they're photo or in-person lineups, standards that researchers have come up with to try and reduce the number of false IDs leading to false convictions. Also with us is Eric Siddall, Vice President of the Association of Deputy District Attorneys for L.A. County. Mr. Siddall, good to have you with us again.
Good morning.
What are your concerns about these requirements for lineups?
So actually, we actually like the bill in terms of most of the substance behind it. And most of the substance behind it are procedures actually adopted by both the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department and also Los Angeles Police Department, which are the two major agencies that we deal with. The issue that we have is with this blind administration, that and also the confidence level. Let me just begin with it in terms of the blind administration that the senator talked about. In gang cases, a relationship is quickly developed between the investigating officer, the lead detective, and the witnesses. And there's a certain amount of trust that is established between those people. That's the only way we get these identifications made in gang cases. Besides my role as vice president of our union, I'm also in the hardcore gang division. So this is all I deal with. And if we had another outside detective going in and asking for the identification, that's going to be extremely problematic. In fact, I highly doubt that most of our witnesses would ever make an identification. In fact, what happens generally is the investigating officer goes out to a neutral location because the witness won't even come into a police station. They're so frightened of being identified as being associated with this case. They'll meet a remote, neutral location. They'll meet in the back of the police car, And the detective will actually, in most cases, will have a recording device, usually an audio recording device. They won't let that witness know that they're being recorded, because if they did, the witness would stop talking, and then they're going to show them a photo lineup of 6 photographs. All those 6 photographs meet the requirements that the senator is talking about. The admonition that is read before the 6 photographs are all within this bill. In fact, they actually go far beyond what this bill requires. But it's not blind and it's not videotaped. And if you videotaped it and if you made it a blind administration, you just won't get that identification. I'll tell you.
So let me just clarify. So the videotape is because people would be fearful of retaliation if they were videotaped when doing the ID?
They won't even talk. If they think they're being videotaped, if they thought they were being audiotaped, they wouldn't talk.
Okay. Second issue on having an independent administrator, someone who doesn't know who the suspect is. Why is it that someone would not be willing to take part in a lineup when it is a neutral officer like that?
Because the only reason why they're talking to that initial detective is because there's a level of trust that's been established. If they think that there's now more outside people being involved, including outside people from the same law enforcement agency, they're just not going to talk. I mean, that's the practical day-to-day reality of gang street crime in Los Angeles. They're not going to speak. They will not identify anyone. They won't even talk about what's happening. And we see it in almost every gang case is exactly the same. There's an audio recording of what the witness said initially to the investigating officer. When they take the stand and they see the defendant, they immediately say everything that they said was a lie. Then we play the video record or the audio recording to impeach them of their statements. So, a lot of what this bill does is good. It's important. It's important to make these types of procedures. That's okay. We're all for that. But
all right. But those 2 provisions you think would make it very difficult to prosecute these gang-related cases. Senator Wiener, your thoughts on that?
Can I just also talk about the eyewitness confidence level issue? Because
real quickly. Yeah, I'm running short on time.
Okay. That's actually an area of dispute. There's expert witnesses that you get from 7 years ago. You get their transcripts, and they say there's no correlation between eyewitness confidence level and the accuracy of an identification. The research seems to have changed. Now the research says that there is a correlation, but that has been fluctuating for quite a while. It doesn't seem to be reliable, even though right now that's what the current the research is.
All right. Senator Wiener, these concerns Mr. Siddall raises.
Sure. So in terms of the blind administration, so you have an administrator who doesn't know who the suspect is and therefore cannot suggest to the witness. There are counties doing this, including in San Francisco and Alameda, Contra Costa, Santa Clara counties. So it is happening. We will, of course, work with the deputy DAs and with other law enforcement and talk about this. But it is being done, and it is recommended by the U.S. Department of Justice and others as the best practice. But of course, we'll be working with everyone on this, and we look forward to doing that. And then in terms of the video, we think it's important. And again, we will talk about whether there might be scenarios where it's simply not possible to get video, and that's why we have a thorough legislative process here in California. We don't just motor things through, and so we look forward to working with law enforcement. I am really glad to hear that the deputy DAs are supportive of most of what we're doing, and that says to me that we're going to have a good legislative process where we try to really work through any of the logistical issues. We want we want public safety. We want guilty people to be convicted, but we also want to make sure that innocent people are not, and that's what this is. And on top of all that, we want statewide standards, because right now different counties are doing it differently. Some have adopted some of these best practices. Some have adopted none of them. So we really would like to have some uniformity statewide.
I have to wrap, but just real quickly, is there a way you could create a carve-out for gang-related crime to deal with the issues Mr. Siddall raises?
I don't know that we would carve out an entire class, but we will certainly be willing to sit down and talk with both DAs and law enforcement officers who work in the gang area to talk about how we can maybe find some common ground.
All right. Thank you, sir, for being with us. That's State Senator Scott Wiener of San Francisco has introduced in the Senate a bill calling for statewide adherence to standards for eyewitness lineups, whether they're photos or in person. And there are several provisions of that, videotaping the lineups, a blind administration of the lineup with someone who doesn't know who the suspect is, a statement to the witness that the suspect may not be in the lineup, that those in the lineup have to meet the general description of the suspect, and to ask the eyewitness what is the level of confidence you have in making this identification. Also, my thanks to the Vice President, Association of Deputy DAs for LA County, Eric Siddall. You can share your comments on the Airtalk page, kpcc.org. Coming up, a challenge to Arizona's death penalty prosecutions and what effect that could have on California. Back in a minute.